Sahawi was a very important Chartist area, of course, and Sahawi Ironworks, where we are now, played a big part in the movement. What can you tell us about this place, Frank?
Well, they start building it in 1778, and it goes into blast in 1779.
Right.
And it's the first coke-fired blast furnace in the old Monmouthshire. So it's a very important place. Until 1818, it was run jointly with the Tredegar Works, and then the Ebbw Vale Works take it over, which leads to a century of rivalry between the two places. The most important connection in Chartist terms is Zephaniah Williams, who worked for the Sahawi Ironworks as the mineral agent, which was a very well-paid and important job in those days. It's the equivalent of a geologist really now. And of course, just before the Chartist uprising, he moves from here to Nantyglo to become the landlord of the Royal Oak.
Yes.
And some people think that it was at the meetings at the Royal Oak, because the Royal Oak became the most important Chartist lodge in the area, that Dr. William Price, the Druid and cremationist, decided that there had to be a parting of the ways, because of course Zephaniah Williams was on the physical force wing of Chartism, and William Price was against physical force, and he said famously, "I will not have a sword put in my hand and a noose around my neck at the same time."
Wise man. So why are the arches behind us so high, Frank?
Well, they built the blast furnaces against the bank so that they could load or charge the furnaces from the top. So all the raw materials were up there on the top, and then they barrowed the raw materials into the furnace, so that they built against the bank. That's why they're there, really.
Okay.
And of course, charging the furnace is a very dangerous job.
I should imagine.
There's lots of fumes and gases coming out, and people were sometimes overcome by the fumes and the gases and fell in to the blast furnace, which must have been a terrible, terrible way to die.
Yes.
But it happens. Of course, nasty accidents are part of everyday life here during the Industrial Revolution.
Yes. So in that case, that makes, if you're a Chartist, you wanted to get rid of some informer, that might well have been a very good way to get rid of the bodies, wouldn't it?
It's certainly what I would have done.
Yeah.
I think throwing somebody into a blast furnace is a sure way of getting rid of all the evidence that they ever existed.
That's right.
And it's a better option probably than dragging bodies across Trevel Moor to the cave.
Right.
But of course the stories of the bodies in the cave are long-lived and they stick about, don't they?
They do stick about. Oh, thank you very much, Frank.
You're very welcome.
Sunday, November the 3rd, dawned a driving rain and high winds. And although the Tredegar Chartists were going to march from the Red Lion public house down in the town, others waited here at the Crown Inn, looking for the Merthyr contingent. Now, I'm with Kevin Phillips, heritage filmmaker. So, can you take the story on from that, Kev?
Well, as far as we know, Pete, the actual riders come here around this area asking people to bear arms for the Chartist uprising. The Crown would have been a good convenient point for them to stop, and like you said, the weather was really bad, so it would be a good place to take shelter.
So, Kev, did all the men they expected turn up?
Many men didn't, Pete. Many men. Houses were searched for these men.
Yes.
They were searching for weapons. They was actually forcing a lot of people who was not committed to the Chartist cause into the actual march from here that was on the way down to the Red Lion. What we've got to remember is that this was treason, and treason was a death penalty.
Yes, of course it was, of course. So, how long were they wait here? They waited, I assume, throughout the day. When did they actually leave this place, these local Chartists?
It must have been round about nightfall, Pete. And at nightfall, you can imagine, just behind us here where the Crown Inn is, a large group of men would have started from here and made their way down to Charles Street.
And of course onto the Red Line to meet the others who were then going to march on Newport.
Onto the Red Lion.
That's right. And of course no Sahawi or Skurva men would have come here, would they? Because they would have gone over to Nantyglo with Zephaniah Williams.
That's right, that's right.
So which way were these disappointed Chartists, disappointed when the Merthyr contingent didn't turn up, which way would they have gone?
Well, they would have come down the road, yes, here, Pete, in front of the Crown, down to Charles Street, with the weapons that were distributed from places, perhaps like the Chartists Cave, or other locations where they was dished out in secret.
And so they went down the Dram Road, did they not?
They went down the Dram Road towards the Red Lion.
And of course then ended up at Newport.
Exactly, with John Frost.
The Chartists actually started their march from Tredegar at the Crown, which is just behind us. So we're coming down Charles Street, Trevor. What actually happened here in this spot?
Well, they sort of all congregated here. It's sort of a catchment area. And they started searching then for people who hadn't turned up. So indiscriminately they went in the houses with pikes, ripping off the curtains to look for anybody. But then they didn't find anybody because they'd all scarpered over the mountains along Canada.
So what sort of weapons were they carrying, Trevor?
Well, mainly pikes that they acquired from farms or somewhere. But pikes are a real active weapon because you could stab horses with them, you could stab people with them, you could poke into haylofts to see if anybody hiding in there, you could poke into beds to see if anybody hiding under the blankets. And the pike was a very useful thing. They had sash windows at the time and most of them were open, so you could poke the pike in and grab hold of the curtains. And one family actually kept the curtains as a souvenir.
Well. So where were they going from here, Trevor?
Well, they had arranged to meet a contingent at Blackwood, so they went down through the town of Tredegar towards Blackwood.
Is it true they were still hunting for men on their march down the valley?
Oh, yes, whenever the opportunity arose, they all went to look for men, and they knew some would promise to turn up and hadn't. And a matter of fact, at Kevin Forest near Blackwood, 2 men who resisted them were apparently stabbed to death.
So from here, Trevor, the Chartists actually marched from this spot down the tram road on our right-hand side, down into the town of Tredegar. Now I've just walked down Carmel Lane past Carmel Chapel to this spot which is closely associated with the story of Sahawi and Sculver Chartists. And with me is Philip Prosser, who's going to tell us something about this. What actually happened at this place, Philip?
Well, the Sahawi and Sculver men, at the beginning of their march from the start in, to meet Zephaniah Williams at Nantiglow, they proceeded down past Carmel Chapel. And at the time, the vicar of Carmel Chapel, he was against the Chartist movement at the time. Yes. As he was in the chapel at the time, he heard the marchers coming towards him, and he ups and runs down the lane in fear of his life. Yes. He comes down to the Sculver Canal, dives into the canal, and just lay there with his head just above the water as the marchers went past. And it seemed that the marchers perhaps had gone into the chapel at the time looking for recruits for the Chartist movement. But people feared for their lives then. If they weren't connected with the Chartists, they feared for their lives. And that's why the vicar at the time, he jumped into the pool.
So it might be said, Philip, that it was from this very spot, really, that the Chartists began their march to Nantiglow to meet Zephaniah Williams.
Yeah, this was it. After they passed the Reverend in the pool, he just lay there, and they carried on towards Nantiglow.
Chartists were certainly feared. Tredegar men who had mustered at the town's Red Lion Inn would be witnessed by 9-year-old Henry Hughes returning home from chapel with his father. In later life he would recall seeing troop after troop of marchers with rifles and pikes on their shoulders. My heart was melting with fear they would force my father to go with them. My father did not go to sleep that night, expecting they might come to our home. He recalled also how, the following day, there was not a young man or old man to be seen in the place, only women and girls, and they were in great fear and tears. So John, we are following the march of the Tredegar Chartists. They've come down through Castle Street, they've come through the Circle, and they've come down now to Morgan Street. So what is there special about this?
Right, well, as I said, the Tredegar Chartists came down Morgan Street and past the Central Chambers, which at the time was the newly opened bank for Tredegar.
Right, yeah.
Now, down at Newport, they had no idea what was happening up here in the valleys and what was going to take place. But the manager here was well aware exactly what was going to happen. Down in Abergavenny, people were fully aware, It was reported in the Hereford Times at the time that people were arriving continuously from Tredegar, Ebervale, Sarawi, Beaufort and Nantiglow, seeking refuge in the town. There was a great fear, a mounting, almost a panic. What increased the alarm to a great extent was the arrival at the Monmouthshire and Glamorgan Bank, the Tredegar branch manager, who arrived with a carriage with all the cash, valuables and securities from the town of Tredegar, which he now deemed as not being safe. And what they were worried about, or he was worried about, that if there would be a robbery here in Tredegar, a bank robbery, well, what else would the Chartists be capable of?
Yes. Ironmaster Sam Humphrey remained with his family in their Bedwellty house home, a clear indication he felt little threatened. Held in high respect as master and JP, he was cheered, it is claimed, by Chartists marching by. Yet Humphrey would have known the country's future then lay in the balance. For Chartism, the die was cast, and even though the assault on Newport would fail bloodily, it would concentrate government minds and hasten much-needed political reforms.
So what links this place to the Chartist rising?
Well, the honest answer is, Jane, we don't know. There's no connection whatsoever. This may have nothing whatsoever to do with the Chartist uprising of 1839. It may be all a bit of local mythology. When you think about the uprising itself, on Monday, November the 4th, 1839, the Chartists reached Newport and began attacking the West Gate, which was defended by 28 soldiers. 9 Chartists were either mortally wounded or died there and then. The rest fled. And so we have no idea whether they fled here to take refuge. What happened after that? What was the Chartist connection? You know, using imagination here, you think Pinkerton, who founded the world-famous Pinkerton Detective Agency in the United States, claimed to have marched with the Sahawi Valley Chartists. Now, supposing he had been an undercover agent, which is likely, and supposing he had been uncovered and then killed, and then his bones buried in this cave, we'd never have those wonderful stories of Pinkerton detectives chasing after Jesse James or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or the Younger Gang, or all those outlaws they chased and tried to bring to justice. We'd have lost a lot if Pinkerton had ended up in this place.
So are we any closer to solving the mystery?
Well, Jane, perhaps it will never be known why the Chartist Cave got its name. But as far as I'm concerned, I hope it long continues to stimulate the imagination.